Good morning, everyone. My name is Alain Falis. I am a venture partner at Fabric Ventures. I'm also an entrepreneur in fintechs since many years. My latest fintech is a payments company which is bridging Web 2 and Web 3, allowing merchants to accept crypto payments at point of sale in physical store as well as online. It's called Cori.me. I'm very pleased to welcome here our panelists. What I will do is, first of all, is ask each panelist to introduce themselves, and then we'll kick off the panel. I'll start with you, Ash.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. Might have to start with someone else.
Oh, dear. I think one of the mics doesn't work.
I don't know if you can hear me. Hi, everyone. I'm Ash. I work at checkout.com, and I lead no, can't hear me? Okay, maybe we'll come to...
Okay, I guess I'll start down at this
yeah,
end.
go.
Sure.
Canon.
Hi, my name's Kanan. I'm the CEO and founder of Stardust. Kind of quick background on myself, engineer turned entrepreneur. About 5 years ago, tried to start collecting CryptoKitties. Did not work at all. Said there has to be a better user and developer experience for creating games on the blockchain. It's been about 5 years since then. Today, we really focus on helping Web3 games appeal to Web 2 users, or really helping Web3 or Web 2 games themselves and institutions, as we'll talk more about, onboard the next 5 million, 10 million plus MAU, DAU to the Web3 ecosystem directly. What's unique about us is we don't have a blockchain, we don't have a token. Our mission is to help game developers and also players build and play games on the blockchain of their choice.
Hi everyone, my name is Daniel. I'm with Google Cloud, where I lead our Web3 team for Europe. Excited to be here today. We'll definitely talk a bit more about what we are doing in this space. Being a more traditional tech player, which is always fascinating for us. Something we're not really used to, but we enter this space humbly, and then we're here to listen, to learn, and hopefully to partner with many of you. So looking forward to meeting you all later.
Ash?
Let's test. Hey, hi everyone. So my name's Ash. I'm at checkout.com. I lead crypto partnerships globally. My background's a banker, so forgive me for my sins, but I did have my prior experience at Visa helping lead crypto. My role at Checkout and what Checkout does is we help bridge payments. So I am traditional in the sense that Dan mentioned, but in terms of what we really focus on, we're trying to bring in fiat in the right way, the regulated way into our crypto ecosystem, and that to help fundamentally power the subsequent use cases. So excited to be here.
Great. So we all know it's been a pretty turbulent week last week, a pretty turbulent year, in fact, for our sector. So I'm assuming right now there's quite a few board members in traditional companies and traditional tech companies that are saying, well, maybe we should forget about this whole thing for the time being, or indeed forever. Are they sectors that can afford to just ignore Web3 as it is?
Yeah, should I?
Please.
Well, I'd like to take us back probably a few decades, because what I find fascinating about that conversation is the whole promise of the internet, or even decentralization, self-sovereign identity, is not something that was introduced by Web3. It's actually something that goes back probably 50 years, where we've tried to solve this. And then came the 90s with the introduction of the TCP/IP open protocol. Basically anyone who had an internet connection and a computer was able to share information, and with that came the birth of what we lovingly call Web 1, where everyone got to share and consume information. Web 2 gave everyone a voice through the likes of Facebook or YouTube. And then today with Web 3, we now see the democratization of ownership, which I think is an enormous opportunity for everyone. And I'd argue, with all the cases we've seen, especially the most recent ones, there's probably never been a more pressing time to push for this decentralized development as we're seeing today.
Do you guys think there are companies out there that basically could afford to just park this for a few years, in like traditional tech companies that could just ignore it?
I I mean, I'll echo, I think, what Daniel said perfectly here, which is, if you look at the birth of the internet, right, maybe 98, 99, you know, the dot-com boom, there was a lull from 2000, 2003, 2004, and even again in 8, 9 for SaaS and the cloud, and we've seen consistent growth in the internet and technology and interoperability space over time that has almost nothing to do with short-term economics, right, but only long-term growth of these industries. And for any board members or like that are, I think, shall we say, poo-pooing on the industry because of the most recent downturn, I think the most recent downturn actually represents more of an opportunity for companies like, you know, even institutions down to even startups to take advantage for the long-term growth that is going to come of this now that all of the, I think, shall we say, non-altruistic actors, right, are out of the space. You know, there is a lot of long-term growth opportunity. I think there is ability to take advantage of.
So gaming companies, like traditional Web 2 gaming companies, are now embracing the technologies that we are bringing to them now, or are there examples of companies that are completely out of it?
No, I can speak to traditional companies. We work with a great company called Tilting Point. They work with 50 plus games. They're a mobile first company, and they are transitioning their first 10 games actually to Web3. And this is something that was started, last 12 plus months, and will continue onward. We are seeing. I guess to speak in the gaming space, a quick bit of history. Mobile 10 years ago was this exact damned if you do, damned if you don't type thing, which is you had to switch to the new technology that would become the mode for the games of the future. And so gaming, even as close as 10 years ago, has already been through this complete 10x paradigm shift of using new technology and what gamers are expecting from their games and how they want to interact with them. And so traditional, like, money aside, this is not stopping them at all. And we see companies from public companies all the way to new companies embracing the space.
Could we say the same in the payment space?
100%. I think because we're enabling utility, right? So my goal is to give everyone optionality, like be able to interact with any use case, with any payment method, and be able to be paid and get paid. And not only for me, but for the kind of enterprises that we support at checkout. So we'd help an exchange like a crypto.com, and you want to get money into it. We'd be helping them on that kind of premise. Or if you look at a Netflix and a Starbucks when they're trying to build on NFT and loyalty, I think what we're really getting to at this point now is kind of what Daniel and Kenan touched on, the evolution of the technology and then the tangible use cases that we can experience in our day-to-day lives. In a payments perspective, I've got to give optionality, but when I look at the way my companies that we support build, when I look at the way Starbucks is building on the blockchain and NFT loyalty play and combining payments into one, but giving that user the ability to be rewarded within the block with crypto or also then withdraw it to fiat, we definitely have to be part of this shift now. And I think, yes, we're in a very interesting period. Again, we're in another potential winter, and every time the institutional level off happens, stronger use case to get built. So I'm seeing it across the core crypto industry that we support, but I'm also seeing it in the enterprise space, especially in the e-commerce space. You look at a lot of food delivery apps as well. They're looking at either they understand the tech or they don't, but they want to really build back from the customer experience. So I think that's where we're on the precipice of seeing a lot more innovation in that front. And I think NFTs are a great vehicle for that, given its loyalty or given its, reducing attrition.
I think we should go back to this bridging between Web 2 and Web 3 and maybe look at what a pure play Web 3 payments company or pure play Web 3 any technology company would look like in comparison to what you guys are doing. But going back to you two representing traditional tech in the context of this panel, how important is Web 3 within your organizations? What is it a tick in the box thing, or has the organization embraced it? What does it represent, internally for your respective organizations? Maybe in terms of number of people and general attention to the space.
Sure. So for Google Cloud, I think for us it was very natural. If you look at the culture of Google, which has always been around open source engineering culture, this was very close to home for us in the first place. Second, I think if you look at the mission of Web3, and we all talk about how important it is to onboard the next billion users or billions of users, what we need to consider is how are we going to do that? And a lot of focus is on UX and onboarding these users. Through our lens, what is absolutely critical is the global, reliable, and secure infrastructure. And the previous panel was talking about this as well, the challenges that they're seeing in building on the blockchains and then the underlying infrastructure. So for us, the viewers, we like to see ourselves as the layer zero, if you will, to support the blockchain technologies and to make sure that we can cater to the needs of users using that technology. Then our mission, going back 20 years now, is to organize the world's information and make it useful for our users. Blockchain obviously is a fantastic opportunity for doing that with information now stored on the blockchain. So for us it was very obvious to come into this space, where we have now recently launched a number of solutions to help democratize blockchain data through BigQuery. And we also want to help simplify the deployment and maintenance of infrastructure through what we call Node Engine, to make sure that developers can actually focus on the user, focus on onboarding, on the experience, and not spend resources on spinning up nodes and maintaining nodes.
We have, I'm in a very niche spectrum of this, right? My goal is to help, yes, with the onboarding users into Web3 ecosystem, but my job is to help enable optionality and make this as easy as possible for people to interact in, I guess, the cryptocurrency sense. For a payments company, to not go into too much nuance, but there is regulatory framework, there is capital, and then there is technology, and that can be quite intrinsically complex. And so our job, and my company's job in this instance, is to actually be the bridge, is to help people and give solutions to companies that are building in this ecosystem, whether it's exchanges, NFT marketplaces, play-to-earn gaming. What we want to do is give the developers, give the L1s like Polygon, give these ecosystems the ability to accept payment and give consumers the optionality to be able to take payment out. So that's me being able to use a credit card to maybe buy some crypto in a gaming ecosystem. We'll give that to a play-to-earn studio like an Animoca. And then if I want to get that off my crypto.com wallet, I have the optionality to take it into a MasterCard, a Visa card. That's our goal as a payments provider, and to move that money correct, compliant, and safely and securely. Within that, our job, I mean, you asked the question earlier, checkout, we've verticalized completely. It's unheard of. I mean, it's unheard of traditional payments companies completely verticalizing against this industry, but you look at traditional banks that have done it, JP Morgan, Citi, and you look at payment service providers like us. We have a dedicated, complete org that is fully functional in its own business, just to support people that are building on blockchain and building in this ecosystem. So I think that's where we see our role. I definitely see a lot of nuanced investment within it, but I also see some very interesting use cases out of it. Like, how do we protect the people that are building from the fraudulent people that are kind of acting in scrupulous ways? And what I've also noticed is, as we have this new industry of blockchain coming out, traditional ways of how banks would manage fraud have now been reinvigorated by utilizing blockchain type of fraud technology. And my job is to kind of put them together and then give us as consumers or end users the ability to transact safely, securely, and help those builders actually build the right solutions.
I guess the key question for the purist out here is, are we going to need in the future any of these companies, the checkouts, the Googles, the Amazons, and so on and so forth? I mean, there are obviously some innovations in payments, pure play payments, on Web3 payments, obviously in gaming, but also in infrastructure like privacy solutions, identity solutions, and so on and so forth. Can we imagine a world that we for the growth of the Web3 sector or industry as it is, or technology as it is, we could get away with not having to use any of the traditional players? I mean, is there an existential threat to traditional players if you take a long-term view of this?
I don't personally think so. I think the shall we say, original blockchain thesis was the cyberpunk, living off the grid, running my own node, owning my own money in my mattress, right, instead of a bank. And I think that will always appeal to some people, and I think the underlying advantage of blockchain is you give people that choice to do that if they want, to disintermediate, right, the Stardusts, the checkout.coms, the Googles, the AWS, whatever they do prefer. What I think is this space is going to trend toward is the average consumer, especially for us in gaming. Gamers want a custodial wallet, right? We are a money transmitter, right? There's a lot of regulatory framework in the gaming space as well, as you deal with under 18s and deal with real money in games that we have to take a look at and keep in mind, is that there will always be middleware providers, and there must, and that's what makes the space accessible to all. But what blockchain does in 10x is gives the users the choice, right? To say, I don't want to be in a custodial wallet, I want to be in a non-custodial wallet, right? I don't want to connect through Google, I want to run my own node, right? I don't want to be on a blockchain that is proof of authority. Potentially I could start my own nodes with my own friends and start my own network, right? And somehow in some IBC world connect to a broader chain. I think there will always be middleware providers, and anyone who says differently, I think we have to respect that and give them the optionality to not use a middleware provider, but at the same time, in a pragmatic world that is built for scale and is built for leverage, right, in which all of the fintechs are built on checkout.com or Stripe Treasury now, those middleware providers give us a level of composability that you can't get without them in the space.
I think those are really good points, and maybe to build on that, the purity test, the centralized versus decentralized. I think we all, as an industry, need to consider what the value is for the user. And I think we all need to be honest that we're still very much on a journey, and there are absolutely advanced users of this space who want to have their cold wallets, who want to manage their own keys. But let's face it, there are billions and billions of people out there who have no clue how to do that. So for them, it's really intimidating if you have to manage your own keys. So for them, a more centralized approach or solution might actually be a great on-ramp for becoming part of this space, which a lot of people will want to do. So that is really something we as an industry, I think, need to consider. What I would add to that as well is, if you look at the stack as we have it today, say the more traditional stack, and the blockchain technologies, it is modular. So it's not black and white. You can start to infuse your stack today with these new technologies to innovate and improve. And I don't think it's a zero-sum game or it's all or nothing. I think it depends on what is it that you're trying to solve, what is the value for your users, and then make your decisions as you go. But I think this is really important in what we do as an industry.
I think really hit on a great point there around optionality, and to your question as well, will it be completely replaced? I mean, people are still writing checks today. I think as a civilization, we're going to need to give optionality here. You look at, I usually use my dad as an example. He's going to hate it, but he writes a check. He's a small business owner, he's a chef. He writes a check in Australia to pay some of his chicken suppliers. And then he has a Coinbase account, a Crypto.com card, a Visa card, and he buys inventory on it. And he gets, not only does he fund his his fiat wallet through his regular bank account, but then he gets the Crypto.com reward for spending it on a Visa card. So my dad's getting the best of both worlds, and that's the optionality that kind of we're powering as an industry underneath it. And the reason that I guess some of these exchanges can give these extra value adds, as Daniel mentioned, to consumers, is because we're in a new technology, blockchain, and because our operating models don't have the legacy operating model costs. So a bank would play around with interchange or certain costs around ACH, whereas a brand new crypto exchange might have the ability to pass more of that on to the end consumer. So I'm seeing a very interesting play happening here, but I think we'll all coexist harmoniously. And the key, as the gentlemen have touched on, is we've got to offer optionality to the industry in this particular phase of growth.
So you think it'll coexist for a long time? You hope it will coexist for a long time?
The crystal ball.
I think that it will coexist for a long time, specifically because if you look at some of the industries today, like the SWIFT network, VisaNet, these are closed ecosystems that the institutional players have access to directly and are not opening them up. And in my belief, pragmatically, again, going from this perspective, is that I don't think it will be possible in our lifetimes to disintermediate them. I think those systems will always need to play a part. but we can bring them to new technologies. And so VisaNet is closed off and no one really has access to it today, right? Rebuilding that on a proof of authority blockchain stack in which the players today in the credit card space can charge credit cards programmatically through a proof of authority network is actually a huge advantage because, you know, even though they're running that network, you can still build composably from other chains on top of that through IBC and other protocols. And so going back to your question, like, do we think they'll exist, you know, centralized, decentralized, middleware, like, you know, cyberpunk, if you will, harmoniously? They must. That's the only way that these industries we have today will adjust to these new industries. The world is not, unfortunately, as much as we all want it to be, rebuilt, right? It is being, I think, you know, extended in advance through the technology we have today, extended to the players of today to then leverage.
It also just has to be better, right? So the solutions that we offer for users of all industries, of all use cases, our solutions just have to be better. If you take the analogy of the electric car, why are people driving electric cars? Because we're getting to a point where they're actually better than ICE vehicles. A lot of people don't really care about whether it's an ICE vehicle or an electric car, but they do like the added value that it brings, and I think that should be our point of view as well. We just need to offer better solutions for our users and make it easier for them to adopt. So yeah, to build on what you just said. Yeah.
It seems to me that there are industries or traditional tech companies that will be effectively there to really bridge these two worlds for a long time to come. But in your example of VisaNet, for example, I mean, that infrastructure was created in the 70s on the back of a association of banks that needed to be confederated into a single processing settlement unit, and that's why VisaNet was created, with all the advantages of basically bringing together these issuing banks and acquiring banks. But if you had to rethink payments today, you wouldn't think it this way, knowing the technologies that we are all involved in Web3. You would probably, or you would definitely start it from scratch with a completely different mindset and a different protocols.
Right? Or if you're also practical about it, and I'll take just an infrastructure lens for a moment. If you want to build the infrastructure to support global decentralized apps, I mean, look at what we've built. I mean, we have a planetary scale infrastructure, ocean cables, 19 of them connecting the continents, dozens and dozens of data centers. Even if you have all the funding in the world, this takes time, this takes expertise. So I think we also just have to be practical, and it's back to that purity test. What is our goal? Is the goal to be pure, or are we on the same mission, where we want to bring decentralization, self-sovereignty, censorship-resistant technology to everyone who wants to use it? And I think if that is the end goal, then let's be practical and build it together.
I think there's definitely, as Daniel and Kenan touched on, there's a balance, as you mentioned. VisaNet kind of protects us as consumers, right? They do the clearing off and settlement. There's a lot of behind-the-scenes technology that happens as a model that protects me from, you know, especially given how interconnected we are now globally and purchasing things online. If I don't receive the goods, you have various mechanisms like chargebacks, like the ability of, you know, third-party fraud risk, which covers us as consumers. Now you take that model away and you take it into the premise of where we're at today. I'll actually tell you some really good pragmatic examples of, there are traditional companies that protect all of us that power banks, like SIFT, that have then partnered with the likes of like Chainalysis, which are on-chain analytics, that then help the evolution. And so I think it's going to be step change evolution, but I am seeing B2B tech companies come together with best of both worlds and protect us. But the other element is, how do you completely invert the model then? And what are we trying to solve for again? You know, is it faster payments that are solving remittance use cases? So are we eliminating that cost model? Or are we helping people own their own data? So are we looking at, you know, self-sovereign IDs, and are we looking at that component of that flow being kind of built separately? There's a lot to experience here, you know, and I think we haven't actually just deconstructed that as a collective still. We are solving for kind of an element here or there.
And so briefly, before we get into the audience questions, are Web3 companies forcing traditional companies tech companies into new business models, totally new ways of thinking about pricing, new ways of thinking about service delivery and so on. Are we seeing that movement now where people in traditional companies have to react?
I'll take it from the gaming side. The gaming space is for want of a better term, a fast follow space. So it's really broken down into, I think the gentleman from Laguna Games speaking on this on the last panel was, cohort analysis and user acquisition and all of this stuff. But it really comes down to what model works in games, what do consumers like, and what's fun, right? At least in gaming. And so from the Web3 space, the first exceptional game in Web3, and Axie was probably the first 10x game, right? And a ton of people look at that model and tried to emulate it, and then we'll see the next one. That is what, at least in the gaming space, these traditional companies are looking for. They're like, what can I point at, put my 30 studios and say, I want that in like 30 different colors and 30 different ways, and with AI, now we're gonna just have AIs kind of, manipulating the same game into different, types for players to play. That is what we are looking at today. And so, yes, over the next 3 years, these Web3 models that emerge, gaming companies are going to fast follow them extremely quickly. And all it's going to take is maybe 2 more hit games, I would imagine, in 23 for all of the companies to convert in 24 to 25.
And I think the transparency and the opportunity to disintermediate, if you will. And then if I look at one of our sister companies like YouTube, who have started to work with NFTs, where you just offer a much better experience for content creators and their fans. It's much easier to connect and to be part of that experience, which I think is one of the great use cases that we're seeing today. If you consider, if you're an early fan of an artist, a music artist, say, it's quite easy to go to a bar and listen to the music. You can approach them and you can really be close. And as they grow in their success, it gets harder and harder for you to engage with this artist. You have to start buying tickets. If you want to get their t-shirt, it's going to be expensive. And there's no real opportunity anymore to engage with them. And I think this kind of technology can really bridge that kind of relationship. So yeah, I think definitely big opportunities there.
Great, thanks. I think we have some questions.
Hey, 1, 2? Yeah. So my question is quite broad yet simple. So we all see that a lot of traditional institutions today, like banks, payment providers, medical, software suppliers, they're almost forced to use Web3 one way or the other, DLTs, or just storing part of the data on blockchain. Yet we all know that all of these institutions are extremely rigid in terms of how fast they adopt certain things. And considering the fact that blockchain is still extremely mature on global scale in terms of how it may develop, how do we protect ourselves and overall economies from being stuck with legacy blockchain systems in 5 years when they adopt something now because they have to, and then within the next 5 years, blockchain as a system, as the whole tech develops so much further. And we are back at a situation where, as of today, some of the banks, when they try to digitize, effectively every developer that knows their system is just dead because they have been 50 when they were developing it 30 years ago.
I guess I'll speak to that kind of from the gaming side. 5 years ago, we started with the Loom SDK, if anyone remembers that technology, way back, Cosmos app chain, and then it solidified into L1s, and now it's going back to kind of L2s and app chains, and what even blockchain means now is like totally rabbit hole we can go down. I think going back to an earlier question on middleware providers, that is one of the distinct advantage of leveraging a middleware provider, because you as a business can run your business and worry not about what the underlying technology is that you need to succeed, but rely on that middleware provider to continually be looking for the best technology that exists today for you as a business. And so we work with many games specifically because they are game developers. They are not blockchain developers. And they're relying on us not only today, but also tomorrow to really understand what the best technology is for them and their needs.
And also, considering going fast and breaking things, if I can interpret it that way, it probably also depends as an industry how much societal impact that could have, positive and negative. If you're a financial institution or you're part of the healthcare industry, these are things to really consider. And then what is the downward potential, I guess, of that development? So that's why you're seeing financial institutions being highly regulated, as an example. Take maybe a bit more time. But equally, I think, personally, I'm quite surprised by the speed with which financial institutions globally are adopting this technology. And we're seeing a lot of initiatives around tokenized debt, tokenized bonds, from some of the largest financial institutions in the world. We see governance now working on CBDCs. So I think the adoption is probably going faster than we had imagined. And then I wouldn't be surprised if that's a hockey stick. We just need to get to a certain barrier, see the proof, and then it will accelerate.
Yeah, I think I do a lot of regulatory work as well. I think you'd be surprised how thoughtful regulators are, and they try and run it in a sprint format as well. So yeah, I know the term rigid definitely applies to me as PSPs, but if you look at it, Daniel touched on this point as well, like what is the value that I'm going to bring back if I enable another element of payments within the blockchain ecosphere? For us, it's been stablecoin settlements. I can help merchants, creators receive their funds faster instead of relying on fiat, which sometimes takes a day or 2 days in the current ecosystem. So that is a use case that's quite a rapid adoption piece. But again, we had to sit with the regulator for 6 months. And for me, even that felt rigid, right? Now that we're all in the crypto industry. So I think that's a very, very important point, building from the current place that we're at in the right way. And then I think the middleware piece is massive. Again, you know, there's so many interoperable providers that I'm seeing emerge that are supporting across multiple L1s and even L2 use cases that I'd say it actually feels. I kind of wake up and I try and read my Twitter and my LinkedIn, and I feel like I've got like 1% of the knowledge out there that, you know, I'm supposed to know being a payments leader. But I think, you know, we're going to see a lot more innovation come out of it, but it will be phased in a way where it meets demand and the right balance of regulatory framework.
I think the companies that you guys represent are pretty agile when it comes to tech. I think the traditional banks will probably struggle. Will probably struggle. That's going to be a challenge for them for sure to keep pace with the developments. One more, yeah.
Guys, thank you very much. Très bien travail, Alan. Maybe the question to onboarding institutions and regarding the mass adoption. So, Alan, you have at Fabric Ventures, you have so many great companies in your portfolio. How do you help them to grow, to acquire new clients, new users? And especially in these turbulence conditions as the market.
So how to help traditional companies get into the Web3 world or on board, or how to get Web3 companies on board Web2 users? Sorry, I didn't get the question.
So regarding the mass adoption, right? So the first two, regarding the mass adoption, and the second question is maybe how do you help your existing portfolio to acquire new users in the current turbulent conditions? Thank you.
Sure. Okay. So the first part of the question about mass adoption, I'd rather leave it to you guys, and then I'll answer the second question.
I'll go for the second question.
Yeah. Okay.
I think we're running out of time.
So we have an approach to investing which is pretty hands-on in the sense of being extremely close to the entrepreneurs and the teams, and helping them out with everything to do with tokenomics, for example, when this is a relevant topics, accessing partners in the traditional industries as well as obviously partners in the ecosystems, other tech companies we've invested in or have not invested in, but we are close to. I think this is the world of Web3 is much more community-driven from what I had seen in sort of the Web2 investment sort of environment. And I believe that you need, as an investor, to be really part of the community and have a deep understanding of the technology challenges, but also the user adoption challenges that the companies are facing. And that's about recruiting the best talents that come from industry into the teams that make assessments about investments, but also help the companies. So I think it's quite different to how you would have approached investment in the traditional VC world of Web2.
Maybe a quick answer to the mass adoption, at least from my point of view, so I'll be quick. We need developers to come to the space. That is going to be absolutely critical. We need to make it easy for them to develop on platforms that abstract away its infrastructure, that focuses on the user. And if you consider the number of developers in Web3, although we have grown massively, hopefully even after last week's events, it's still small compared to companies like Google, right? I mean, just look at Google. We have tens of thousands of developers, which is probably already more than in total in the Web3 space. So we need to find a way to bring developers here, to make it easy for them to build, and from there see the next exciting applications that will cater to billions of users.